Okay, hello everyone. I recorded a whole 15-minute video where I was trying to be a little bit inspiring, and my microphone here was just like, I'm going to record in the worst quality possible. You couldn't even make out what I was saying. So I am out here in my local orchards. I've wandered quite a bit from my home and where I was, and I actually came across a pond I was looking for. But I wanted to share an experience that I had last night while I was praying the rosary. And I was thinking about the crucifixion, and I guess I'll get a real good test to see how the audio gets cut out. It's very loud. There's sirens, and there's a plane going by. While I was praying the rosary last night, I was thinking of Jesus and his sacrifice and his crucifixion and his service to humanity and what he asks us to do to be in service of humanity. And as I was reflecting on that, I remembered that Mother Teresa said that if we really wanted to be of service, the best place to start was at our own home, was with our own family. And that really hit home for me, because when I was just a few years younger, I really thought that I had to be out in the world and working as a counselor, a psychologist, a therapist, whatever, and helping people to change and shape and transform their lives through healing practices and therapy. That's what I spent the last few years doing with the tarot readings and the astrology. But I realized too, and now as I'm going through my Saturn return, that where I'm really being asked to be of service is at my home, is with my wife. I don't know how many people my age would put themselves into a situation that I've put myself in, where I'm dealing with a house that is somewhat old, needs a lot of repairs, needs new roofs, needs potentially a new well, and lots of other things. In a situation where their partner isn't at their best health, and that's all I'll say about that. And to really take on what I think most people would view as an unbearable burden. No, I don't think that at all. And in fact, the way that I've always looked at challenges is to see them as opportunities. I've always had that perspective of growth and effort, growth through effort and challenges and obstacles. But I didn't really start living it, I think, until very recently, when things started to get very real, as far as having to deal with the house foreclosure process and deal with declining health. And, I think it's a very difficult situation to be in. But my hope has only increased. I've only gotten more hopeful despite all these challenges. And I realize that's because of the way that I view life, the way that I view my circumstances. Always wanting to make the best out of something and to be of service. I spent, maybe like many people or most people, my 20s entirely selfish, entirely self-involved, only worried about what I wanted, what I was doing, what I could get, so on and so forth. And, a lot of that changed slowly as I met my wife and got married and we started living our life together. But I still had these dreams of maybe at some point finishing my college degrees or having a career where I'm really involved with helping people. And I realized that, the opportunities never really came, never could really afford the time or the money to get certified with anything or to go back to college, because there were much more immediate needs. You hear all the red-winged blackbirds? Oh, maybe not, because I have the sound speaker thing. Anyway, and maybe many people would view that as missed opportunities, but I realized that God presents us with everything the way He does for a very specific reason, and it's because He wants me to learn how to do everything from home, to try to be self-sufficient in a family kind of way, where my goals are not just about what I want to do, but about how I can provide for my home, for my wife, how I can learn to be more emotionally attuned to her needs, how I can be more observant and notice what needs to be done around a house, because, it's strange, but if you don't have anyone teaching you that stuff, you just don't, I don't know, maybe some people pick up on it more naturally, but I've kind of hit a dead end here. But anyway, to learn to be of service at home and with all the opportunities I've been presented, all the responsibility that I've been presented with and asked to take up, that's my cross. That is how I can be of service. And what Mother Teresa reminds us, that we really do need people around us, but we need the right people around us. And the most right of the right people that we could ever really have around us is our family. Whether it's a family that we're born into or whether it's the family that we create for ourselves, we have the opportunity to create relationships that help us to grow closer to and with God. I think this is a really important message nowadays, because everybody wants to go out and change the world, and everybody wants to be an activist. And while there are clearly necessary instances where things in legislation have to change, or there have to be social movements, I think we would find ourselves in a lot better situation if everyone looked inward, reflected on their own lives, mended their relationships with themselves, mended their relationships with their family, mended their relationships with God. And that doesn't even have to be in a strictly Christian sense. It's more of what the esotericists refer to as a Christ consciousness. And what that really means is to be more aligned with the fabric of being. It's really a kind of abstract, but it's no coincidence that throughout this Lent and this Easter, which has been very, very impactful, more than any other Easter I've ever experienced, because I'm delving into my relationship with Christ, and at the same time, other teachers came up in my life who have taught me more about esoteric teachings, and specifically esoteric astrology, because I have been searching for a way to bridge all the what I thought were gaps in my thoughts and in my philosophy and my knowledge, trying to reconcile what I perceive to be differences between them, but recognizing that they all coalesce into one source, and that one source is God. In esotericism, the ultimate goal is service. The ultimate goal is the evolution of the soul. And the way to achieve the evolution of the soul is to learn how to put your personality aside and to prioritize service to humanity. That looks different for different people. And this is where the astrology part of it comes in, because Saturn in our chart shows us where we can have that service really be of use, of practical use. And for me, it's in my 4th house, which is exoterically known as the house of home and family, but esoterically and psychologically, it's where you are rooted to your soul. It's where we experience connectedness. It's how we experience life itself and our bodies and the mental and emotional aspects. How we experience all these things in a connected, rooted way. And that connection and that root, the source, God. So these past 40 days have been kind of a roller coaster for me, as I'm really trying to grow and expand and learn how to be more mature and to put myself aside and to be of more use to my wife, to my home, and from home to be of service. And we thankfully live in a day and age where we have this beautiful communication technology where we can put these messages out. Most of it will fall on deaf ears, and that's probably a lot to do with my rambling, but if you're able to kind of stick around and try to parse out what I'm saying, you recognize that what I'm getting at here is trying to spark a connection to that root. And that's Saturn and Aries in my 4th house. The spark, the connection, the initiation. But we do that, we connect to our roots, we connect through God, and we elevate our own consciousness and humanity's consciousness through service. And we have to think about what that means, because it's not activism. It's an internal process. It's how we come to know God, and then how we come to allow God's light to shine through us and to uplift other people. That's all I want to do. And I think that should be the goal for everyone in their own way. And we're given a personality to allow us to express that in our own way. We're given talents to be able to express that in our own way. And it's really a tragedy to not learn how to express that. So as badly as I might be doing it here, or as well, I know that I'm touching on this, that I'm rubbing up against it, and that hopefully by continuing on this path, by sharing as much as I can share, by learning as much as I can learn and then sharing it, I can simultaneously attend to my soul, to my home, to my wife, and to the greater fabric of consciousness that is us, that is humanity. So I've literally stopped on a rock, and now I'm kind of like on a on a pedestal here, and I'm standing in the sun, and it's a bit chilly, but it feels right. So if you can ignore the messy madman hair that I have and the weird rambling part of my nature, unless that's endearing to some people, I don't know. I hope you can hear this message and remember what Mother Teresa said about starting our service from our own home, by mending our relationships with our family, by, if we're able to, create our own families and nurture new relationships with the children that we bring into the world, or if we're able to adopt children and bring them in and to also teach them to be a soulful, conscious human being that again is just set on uplifting everyone. But it starts in here, it starts with him, and then we allow that light to express through us, through acts of service, by putting ourselves aside, by choosing to no longer be selfish, and by choosing to accept as much responsibility as we can. You know, that's the quintessential Jordan Peterson message. Accept responsibility. And, you know, bear your cross. But remember, too, that Jesus says his yoke is light, that we can bear our crosses because of him, that it doesn't have to feel like a burden, that it doesn't have to feel like an insurmountable mountain. Because really what Jesus teaches us is very Saturnian or very Capricornian, in the sense that we have to be the goats that climb the mountain. And I just learned this the other day, that there's apparently part of the myth of the goat climbing the mountain is that once it gets to the top, it becomes a unicorn. I didn't know that. But then there's another part of it that once they get to the top of the mountain and that they're at that peak or they're at the plateau, they hear the call to come back down the mountain and to take their experience and to bring it to all of humanity. That's actually the transition from Capricorn to Aquarius. And we are in a very Aquarian time. We're on the very cusp of the age of Aquarius, which is partly why we're experiencing a whole lot of trauma and turmoil, because we're really at this transition of an age, more so in the next 50 to 100 years, when the transition actually fully takes place. And we have to be the ones to figure things out, to figure out how to use the Piscean message that Jesus gave us, to take the best of that forward into this new age. And my generation and the next 2 or so generations will be the ones on this turning point. And that's scary as hell, because we have a lot of shit that we have to figure out. And we start that by returning to that root. Be of service. Tend to your home. Tend to your family. Fix your relationships. Take responsibility. Build something. Contribute. And do it all graciously. Happily. Because you know what? I spent my early 20s being completely selfish. And I was so alone. And I didn't let anyone in. And externally, I was fine. I was putting on the bravest face that I could. I had a really good front. But man, I can't tell you how lonely it is to be stuck in a life where you're just worried about yourself. What you want. What you think the world should be. What you can get. It's a lonely, painful way to live, and it's how most people are living. So, a gentle yet not so gentle reminder to learn now to live not just for yourself, but for something greater than yourself, for other people, because you never feel more alive than when you uplift the souls of other people and bring them closer to the light of God. That's it. I'm done rambling. Thank you.